Okay, welcome along to the Goal Picks. Aaron, thank you so much for joining us. You are the first filmmaker that's going to be having a little quick chat with us. As I mentioned, we wanted to, because things have been a little bit different this year, and we wanted to create some platforms with which to celebrate our filmmakers. And unfortunately, as we all know, it's that bit more difficult this year to bring everyone together on and to do that on the red carpet. So we wanted to talk to some of our filmmakers and give some of the other ones competing, and also just a general, the filmmakers out there, a little insight into what it takes to make a movie or a film or a documentary or whatever the context of the piece be that gets to this stage, which is finished, which is a milestone in and of itself, but also then to get to the festival circuit and to start being awarded and recognized for your work. So we'll get into all of that. But the first thing I want to do is, Aaron, tell us a little bit about your film.
Well, the film is called Knox, the Rob Knox story, and it's a documentary that follows the life and death of my close friend, Rob Knox, who was lucky enough to appear in Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince. Unfortunately, not long after he wrapped on filming, he was celebrating with his friends, and he was attacked and murdered by a man with 2 kitchen knives. So this documentary that we've come together to make, myself and Rob's family, is highlighting the dangers of knife crime, and it's something that hasn't gone away despite COVID or any other social issues that have arisen recently. It's something very much that's still there, and it's happening right now as we speak. And it's, for me, the most important film that people will see this year, in my opinion, in the UK especially.
I mean, one of the things that we would ask all of our filmmakers, and I think this will be relevant to yourself as well, and that is, what were the difficulties in making your film? And for nearly everyone, that would be, finding the finance, maybe, or finding the actors, or getting distribution, or writing a script, or whatever the case might be. And I'm sure that that's all also relevant to yourself. But I suspect that there was a more harrowing element to your film, and that was, the story in and of itself, and to rehash those memories again for the part of making the film, but also for the research and for what I'm sure you guys and your producers did, which was to research not just the story around Rob, but the story around knife crime in general, and meeting up with various police organizations and various helplines and foundations. I mean, I can't imagine that was a very that would have been a bit of a harrowing task, and I can't imagine that what those people said to you would have been very positive. And we need to figure out a way to change the narrative, to get to a point where I'm speaking to someone. Hopefully I never have to speak to someone again about this ever, but even if a situation did arise in which that was the case, cut to 4 years' time, you would hope that the police organizations are saying, do you know what? It's getting better. There's not so much around. We're really on top of it. But that doesn't seem to be the case.
Completely. It's the making of this documentary was hard on many levels. Personal feelings aside, it was a real struggle at some point to keep my head above water, not just with finance, but in terms of piecing together essentially the story of how my friend was murdered, why it happened. There are questions that still linger on 13 years later. And believe me, a lot of water has gone under the bridge since 2008. But like I said to you earlier, that, numbers are as high as they have ever been, knife crime wise, and fatalities with the offense weapon being a knife and things like that. And it was 3 years of really knuckling down with research, trying to find out more about knife crime, trying to understand the mentality behind why these things happen. Why are there so many failures in the system? It's not just telling the story of my friend. It's a whole can of worms that you're opening, and you're finding out things about knife crime and things that just shouldn't be a thing. Knife crime is now a subculture of Britain, like fish and chips or red telephone boxes. That is now a staple of our society. I fear for my family, all the time. Go out, make sure you tell people where you are. We shouldn't have to live like this.
Not at all.
And with Rob's story, it was a fantastic opportunity to take all that aggression, all the sadness, all those raw emotions, and try to build something that not only educated people but made people feel. That was the core behind our prerogative when making this film, was to make other people feel like they'd lost someone, or that they could relate,
Hmm.
be it having a brother or a sister or a nephew, niece, whatever. So they would walk away from this documentary and think, oh God, something needs to be done. A conversation needs to be had.
Hmm.
And believe me, we've spoken to so many people um, regarding this. We've spoken to the mayor's office, we've spoken to celebrities, we've spoken to knife organizations and charities. And 13 years later, it kind of feels like, well, what the hell has been done since then? And that's something that we tried to illustrate in the documentary.
Hmm. I mean, just listening to you speak right there, I mean, I've told this to you before, I don't personally watch, I'm not part of the jury at the GMAs. I don't personally watch the movies, but every now and again, the team will reach out and they'll say, hey, you got to watch this one. It's particularly good for whatever reasons. And I remember watching your documentary, just sitting right over there at the kitchen table during the day. Now, I do have two younger brothers, and I didn't know Rob. I've never met any of his friends. In fact, I've spoke with you quite a bit, but I've never met you personally yet, and physically, should I say? Um, and I watched that documentary with a lump in my throat the whole way through. I mean, it broke my heart to watch Rob's brother. I mean, I don't even recall his name, but yet I remember him vividly in my memory, and it broke my heart to see him because he's of a similar age to my younger brother, and I can't imagine what it must be like to have to do that. And that,
That was incredibly hard. Jamie
my God.
doesn't really, we've said this in interviews before, Jamie doesn't really open up about the events that happened that night. But before we, and again, you were talking about what some of the challenges of this documentary. This was one of the biggest challenges, was having to sit Jamie down. It was a very intimate, closed set, just in a garage, opening up, and I was asking him to bare his soul, and he knows this as well. If you were to ask him, that it was so crucial to the documentary, and it was so important that we knew how he felt, that we knew about, we felt his loss, not, telling a story and, also that's what happened. No, we had to feel what
Hmm.
he felt. We had to feel everything that he was going through at the time, the fear, the adrenaline, um, and it is a heartbreaking story. And before that interview with Jamie, I never really discussed it with him at all. Why the fuck would I?
Hmm.
That's something that's very, it's
It's not
the
an
most
easy
horrible
broachable
day in
topic,
life.
you know?
Exactly. So when we actually did run through it, I was finding out things about that night in specific detail, as you will see in the documentary, etc. That just, like you said, a lump in your throat. Even I get a lump in my throat when I watch it, especially when I watch it with someone who hasn't seen it before. I get nervous. That's an odd feeling. It's an odd thing to say as the director, but I do get nervous because I'm keeping one eye on the screen, and I'm keeping an eye on the person next to me watching this documentary to see what their reaction is to this very real story. It's not fiction. It's not a movie
Hmm.
per se. This is, as real as it gets.
Well, that's what I was going to ask, because for our directors out there, directing a film is, I mean, you go down that rabbit hole in and of itself, and people get all sorts of lost down there, and that's when they're doing something about Superman and Kryptonite. You know what I mean? And they get lost in the rabbit hole of directing, or they're doing something about whatever. How did you direct a film, which in and of itself is a crazy task, but then do a film that is not just about a topic that's harrowing, but a topic in which the person that was affected is your friend. So how did you separate yourself, like the director Aaron, from the Aaron who his mates over there and his Rob's dad's over there and so on? Like how did you separate yourself, to the extent where you could make that movie?
No, that's a good question because I'm still trying to figure that one out. It's, I'm this is my first feature film. It's my first time attempting this, and I'm incredibly proud that it's Rob's story that I'm doing. But there were moments when either filming or I'd be editing the documentary where I would break down and cry. And you can't help that. The amount of stock footage we have of Rob, hearing his voice, seeing him on screen, that's really hard, because for the majority of the time we were filming, I had an on sensation that he was there with us. I'm not a particularly spiritual person per se, but it did feel like he was in the room because I was always hearing his voice coming out the speakers. And separating myself, I learned very early on. There was even a point where I thought I can't do this because I'm too close. But I came up with the idea of bringing on board 3 creative consultants from the very early stages, who I'd worked with on some IMAX stuff, and their names were Alice, Bene, and Numa, and they basically kicked my ass into shape. They didn't know Rob, they didn't know the family. They were able to give me an outside perspective that I needed, where they could steer me on the right track. I'd send them versions of scenes. I would send them bits of scripted stuff and say, how is this? Does this work well? Does this flow? And very early stages of this documentary were, I was getting feedback saying it doesn't quite work. It feels like a love letter to your friend rather than a film. Mm-hmm. But eventually the relationship that we had really, really like gelled, and we were able to come up with a way where, every approval that we went through, I was able to figure out what was best for the documentary. Later on, we had Nick Kenton come on board, who is a true crime producer who works a lot on TV, who was able to kick my ass some more, just to make sure that we were telling the story correctly, as honestly and as truthfully as possible, but without too much of my emotion dripping in, as it were. This isn't about me. This isn't about how I felt about him, but it was important that I tried to get Rob's personality across in the documentary, because if you don't care about Rob, it's called the Rob Knox story. If you don't care about him, then the film has failed utterly and completely. That was one of the hardest things to do, to separate myself. I had help. It wasn't something I did myself. I had help from some amazing people, and they did a great job of keeping me in shape.
Well, I mean, I really think you have done that. I mean, as I said before, I didn't know Rob, but from watching the film and from what I've read about him and heard about him, and you told me about him since that time, I do feel like I kind of get a sense of who the guy is, and I suspect I'm not too far off the mark. So I think I think you really, really did a great job there, and I can only imagine that his family is. It's bittersweet for them, It's they're proud of it, I'm sure, but it's bittersweet. I can imagine. But one of the things I was thinking as well is, it's obviously terrible, but the situation is that because Rob was in the Harry Potter franchise, right? So he will be forever young in that moment in that movie, as will all the other characters. But when you have somebody, let's say it's person X, right? They're young at one point, they grow up, and the people that knew them from childhood, they know them now as an adult, and the kids don't latch on because they're now, they're an adult. But Rob will be forever young in that movie, so therefore he'll be forever relevant to what I think, which is the main demographic of the people we need to be teaching, which is children. We need to be teaching our young kids that you just can't do this stuff. You like grabbing a knife from your kitchen before you leave. That is something that you should never do, ever, under any circumstances.
I think it must be some sort of you must be in some ridiculous mind frame to actually think this is normal. Like like a mundane thing. You get up, you brush your teeth, grab a knife. That's not right. It's one of those things where it is something that we need to deal with as a community, just as much as the government needs to do something. And I've lost all faith in the government in terms of trying to get things done.
I think we all have this year.
Yeah, I'm not going to open that can of worms. But in terms of what should be done, I honestly think as a community, whether it's the film community, where it's our very own neighborhood, we could all be doing something. I think we've we've lost something over time, and this, this goes into something else. But I honestly do think that people aren't connected anymore. I think, we're not really neighborly with each other. I think there needs to be more of a community spirit, especially in Britain, because I think so many of us are so divided, whether it be, I'm not wearing a face mask, I'm wearing a face mask, I'm voting for Brexit, I'm not voting for Brexit. There's been so many divisions in the country that, it's pandemonium. The government love that, because they won't be the bad guys. It will be the anti-vaxxers or whatever, or Brexit, for bollocks. It's, we need to focus our attention on the things that matter. Absolutely. Especially with our younger people.
There's a lot of noise out there at the moment. We need to cut through the noise, and I think that's one of the reasons why we wanted to not just to take the film, because it's a great piece of film work, and that's why it is being noticed at the GMAs for its film work solely. But also, we've found ourselves in a position where we have access to the media and that kind of thing. So we wanted to give it a bit of a platform, and that goes on to this coming September 19th. Actually, we'll be having a chat with yourself and your distributors at the upcoming GMA pre-party on September 19th. So just to wrap up, I wanted to say now, what would you say would be, going forward with this now? How would you want to get that message out? Where might somebody be able to see the film, and when would they be able to see it? And of course, then you can talk a little bit about securing woodcut.
Oh yeah, of course. Well, that's brand new news. So I will get into the whole woodcut situation. But for people who want to watch the Rob Knox documentary, you can watch it at the Gold Movie Awards, because it will be on Film Ahoy and the many other streaming services that you guys
Fest and Film Ahoy from September 16th, 12 noon GMT, and that platform will run for 7 days up until September 23rd, which is the award ceremony. And should any of our semi-finalists or nominees go on to win, they will be offered a year distribution globally with both those platforms.
That's exactly what I was going to say, but you said it much better. So
it's almost like I read it.
Yeah, exactly. You read my mind. But no, that's where you can watch it. It will be available online. And I suppose I might as well just drop it now. But we will be securing a distribution deal for television, an international deal with Woodcut Media. Now, Woodcut Media.
We love an exclusive.
There you go. That is an exclusive. There will be a press release very soon and announcements and everything on social media. But this is a big thing for us because it's not easy securing distribution. It's not easy getting into film festivals either. It's quite hard to shout above the rest because there's such amazing and diverse work out there. It's incredibly hard. But to get into festivals, we're extremely grateful. And we're very grateful to the GMA as well for giving us this platform. And we're incredibly lucky that we've been noticed by Woodcut, who produced the Damilola Taylor documentary. They did documentaries on the Craze. They do a lot of true crime as well. And they've seen the potential in this documentary and have decided to take it on board and get it out into the world. And hopefully we'll have more news soon. But I'll be happy to talk to everyone at the pre-awards on the 19th. So, yeah, that's an exclusive.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, when you have more information on where it'll be, which platform, when it gets out on its general release, we'd be happy to run that in the Gold magazine or put out some sort of a notification to let everybody know. So we're going to wrap up because this is just a little short, informal thing, and we're going to put one of these out now every day for the whatever we have. I can't believe it's like 10 days to the award ceremony, and yeah, so we'll play out with the trailer of your film and let everyone have a little sneak peek. And of course, as Aaron just mentioned, from September 16th at 12 noon UK time until September 23rd, you can find the trailers for all of our projects on the GMA Player on our website, and on Flickfest and Film Ahoy, you can watch the entire content. Aaron, it's a pleasure. Thank you so much, very much, as always.
Thank you for having me.
And yeah, we will see you on our red carpet on the 19th.
Hey, speak to you soon.
Amazing. Awesome. Take care, man. Bye.
Every knife crime story is important. It's just that Rob's one had a light shone on it from the press because of because of Harry Potter, I suppose.
The 18-year-old was stabbed in a fight which broke out in Sidcup in Kent.
Robert's friends told us his brother was attacked by a man carrying 2 kitchen knives.
Almost like possessed, really. Don't know whether he's on something.
A 21-year-old man was arrested on the scene and is still being held on suspicion of murder.
Previously he'd been arrested and at the time of the murder of Rob, he was on bail for a knife crime offence.
Like an increasing number of victims of knife crime, that night was to be his last.
When it came through on the news, it was so shocking. So he was a very easy and naturally talented guy to work with.
Robert was so popular, and probably because of his popularity in Harry Potter, it's bringing a larger media attention to the problems of knife carrying in this country.
My mum said that, say I catch something like winter vomiting disease.
If that serves a purpose, then hopefully Robert would have done something else exceptional in his short life.
And I saw the knife go into my hand and come out the other side.
He's held the knife up to my neck, but he's after my mate, and we can't find my mate anywhere.
Amongst them, his younger brother, Jamie. Eyewitness reports suggest Robert died trying to protect him from the attacker.
I think in my heart, I knew that he was probably dead then.
I wonder if Rob hadn't been a successful actor, whether people would have heard your story.
No, I think there might have been 2 lines in the local newspaper and that would have been it.
And it's a shame that it's important to sort of platform this so much now. And it's more important than ever.
I wish it'd all stop tomorrow, but I'm afraid that's not going to happen. It's just getting worse. When's it all going to end?